Let's talk about your car seat. Yeah, the thing you sit on every single day. Buried inside it is a tiny, hidden feature that has to make a life or death decision in less time than it takes a camera to flash. Most of us never see it, we never even think about it, but it is an incredible piece of engineering designed for one single violent moment. So picture this. You're driving, maybe listening to some music, and then bang, someone slams into the side of your car. Now, you know your car has side airbags, right? So you're expecting this life-saving cushion to pop out. But what if the airbag inflates perfectly and just stays inside the seat? Completely useless, trapped by the very fabric or leather you're sitting on.
And this brings us to what engineers have a great name for, the potato chip paradox. Think about it. We want our car seats to be tough as nails, right? They have to survive a decade of us sliding in and out, spilling coffee, kids with sticky fingers, the sun beating down, all of it. But in a crash, that same super durable material has to tear open along a perfect line in 5 milliseconds. That's 5/1000ths of a second. It has to be incredibly strong and precisely weak at the exact same time.
So how do they solve this paradox? They use this, the tear seam. The absolute best way to think about it is an emergency escape door built right into your seat just for the airbag. It's kind of wild. It's one of the only parts in your entire car that is literally designed to fail, but to fail perfectly. And here's why this is so critical. The data is absolutely crystal clear on this. Side airbags, when they actually deploy the right way, slash the risk of death in a side impact crash by a staggering 37%. But that whole 37%, it is completely dependent on that one little seam tearing open exactly when it's supposed to. So this begs the scary question, right? What happens when that emergency door is, well, locked shut? What if the engineering is just a tiny bit off and that seam is too strong to break in those crucial milliseconds? The consequences can be absolutely catastrophic. And listen, this isn't just some theoretical what-if scenario. This has really happened. Let's look at a real-world disaster, and we can tell the whole story with just 4 simple but pretty shocking numbers. It shows just how a tiny change can have massive, massive consequences. It all started right here. A supplier trying to do a good thing wanted to improve the quality and feel of the car seat. So what they do? They added just 2 extra stitches per inch along that special seam. A tiny, well-intentioned change that on paper just seems like a premium upgrade. But that tiny change had a fatal flaw. In cold weather, those 2 extra stitches made the seam so strong that it delayed the airbag from getting out by 18 milliseconds. Now I know what you're thinking. 18 milliseconds? Who cares? But in the physics of a car crash, that is an eternity. It's the difference between the airbag cushioning you and it being way too late. And the result of that tiny delay? A massive global recall. 470,000 vehicles had to be brought back to dealers just to get their seat covers replaced. All because of 2 extra little stitches per inch. Unbelievable. And the direct financial cost of this quote-unquote tiny error? 320 million Japanese yen. And that's before you even think about the damage to the company's reputation, not to mention the potential loss of life. It's a powerful lesson in how critical these hidden little details really are. Okay, so after that horror story, how do engineers actually get this right? Let's take a look at the secret blueprints, so to speak. There are basically 4 main ways they design a seam that can be tough enough for daily life, but fragile enough for an emergency. So here's the playbook. For your everyday cars, think a Civic or a Corolla, they often use the simplest method, a weaker thread, kind of like the dotted line on a package that says tear here. It's cheap, but it can be sensitive to cold. Then you move up to your high-end cars, like a Mercedes or a BMW. They often use lasers to perforate the material from behind. It's super precise, but it's expensive. Then there's heat pressing, which is a clever trick you might find in some SUVs, but it can get brittle as it ages. And finally, you've got the gold standard, used by brands like Volvo and Lexus, a 2-layer system. It's the most reliable by far, but it's also the most expensive to make. Now, this is where all this knowledge becomes your superpower as a car owner, or especially as a car buyer. So let's talk about the myths that can be genuinely dangerous and how you can spot the BS when you're in the showroom or looking online. So here's the first big one. You're in the showroom, you're checking out a car, you feel the seat, and you notice the stitching is really thick and dense. Your brain immediately says, oh, this is quality, premium, durable. But is it actually safer? Nope, absolutely wrong.
Just remember that massive recall we talked about. When it comes to that specific seam that's covering the side airbag, less is more. That sparse, maybe even slightly imperfect looking stitching isn't a flaw. It's a life-saving feature, not a bug. It's engineered weakness. Okay, next myth. We all just assume that expensive, thick leather has to be safer than a standard fabric seat, right? I mean, it just feels tougher, more substantial. Not necessarily. In fact, the natural toughness of leather can make it a stronger prison for that airbag to try and break out of. So unless the automaker is using one of those advanced, expensive techniques like laser weakening, a simple fabric seat with a weakened thread can actually allow for a more reliable deployment. That material strength is actually a challenge they have to overcome, not an automatic safety benefit.
But the number one absolute killer myth is that any old aftermarket seat cover is fine. Just look at these numbers. A generic, all-encompassing cover can delay deployment by up to 25 milliseconds. It can reduce the airbag's effective protection area by 60%, or even worse, it can cause a total deployment failure or misdirect the airbag so it shoots out away from you. This is a huge, huge deal. So how can you apply this right now? I'm going to give you a simple check you can do on your own car or any car you're thinking of buying in less than 30 seconds. This is your seat's survival code. It's a simple 3-point check. First, find the tag. Look on the side of your seat. It'll say airbag or SRS airbag. That marks the escape hatch. Second, feel the seam right there. Run your fingers along that specific seam. Does the stitching feel different? Maybe a little sparser than on the rest of the seat? That's a good sign. And third, and this is the most important one, if you have any kind of seat cover that blocks that tag and that seam, take it off today. So, the next time you get in your car and you happen to notice that one seam on the side of your seat looks a little less perfect than the others, don't think of it as a flaw. That's not a mistake. It's a precisely engineered escape route. It is your 5-millisecond lifeline.